Hello everyone, my name is Michael and I am speaking to you from the verse. If you're not sure what the verse is, I encourage you to go to my website at rewritingtheverse.com, and there you'll find out everything I'm aware of about the verse, as well as a lot of written updates and many YouTube videos as well. So this particular video is connected to the upcoming 12/26/2019 annular solar eclipse and new moon as well. That all falls at the same time. And actually it's the 24th today, so only less than 2 days away. And depending on where you're at on the planet, it's either going to be at December 26th or the 25th. So I felt guided to do this video today, and I am a past life regressionist and rewriter. And so lately I've been called to do videos connected to some of the major portals over the last few months, especially since 10/10, 11/11, and 12/12. I've been doing a lot of past life regressions, rewrites, healings to help lift our energies so we can pass through those gates as efficiently as possible, let's just say. And now, after all of those, we're sitting here at the precipice of a brand new soul cycle, actually. And this, I believe this solar eclipse is going to give us a thrust into 2020. Now, also, as I've been doing these past life regressions over the last few months, it has become clear to me that the twin flame, divine masculine and divine feminine dynamics are actually what gives fuel, or at least much of the fuel, into lifting our vibrations as we're going through this ascension process right now. That's exactly what we're going through. We're leveling up very quickly here. And there, 2020 will be a continuation of that energy. So since the twin flame connection is so strong, I have been guided now to begin to do a series of past life regressions connected specifically to the twin flame collective, and helping lift that group higher and higher through the ascension process is what I'm getting. So you might be asking yourself, well, am I a part of that? Maybe I'm not connected. And my personal belief is that everyone has a twin flame. Everyone was co-created with someone else. Now, not everybody believes that, but I do. And that also means that each person in the dynamic is either a divine feminine or a divine masculine. So no matter which category you consider yourself to be, everyone is connected to this. So since I'm passionate about the twin flame connections and past life regressions, makes sense that these two would come together and that I can offer this very special gift to humanity and do what I can to help with the ascension process. So recently I have started to record in full my past life regressions and rewrites. And so I began that process today, specifically holding the space about the twin flames, divine masculine, divine feminine, and how this upcoming eclipse is affecting them, and how we can utilize this energy to once again lift the vibration. So I began recording live a past life regression. And so it didn't go quite as planned. There were actually several interruptions, and ultimately I realized I wasn't going to be able to finish that on camera. So, but what I can do is I can give you the highlights of what I just completed with that past life regression, but I did not do the rewrite yet. I have an idea of how the rewrite is supposed to go, and that part has not been done yet, and I can do that on video right now, so you can experience the energy shift in the moment with me. To clarify for those that aren't aware, I am a past life regressionist and rewriter, which means, yes, I can see past lives, understand all of that, but then I have the ability to go back and rewrite the outcome to something higher vibration. And by doing that, it not only heals back then, but then it heals now, currently. So that's the part, the rewrite part is what I haven't done yet for the past life regression I just completed. And I thought, well, maybe I can just at least do that part live here and get it out there for you guys to see and understand what's happening. And for those of you, well, I was going to say, if you're fans of a certain movie series, you're going to really like this. I don't plan these things ahead of time. I do not look down the timelines until the time comes, and so even I'm surprised, you know, in how things unfold in them as well. So I won't blow the surprise, and it'll come up. You'll hear in the regression what series, movie series I'm referring to. So, okay, let me get a little bit more comfortable, and I will share with you about the regression that I just did. So again, the focus is about this upcoming solar eclipse tomorrow on December 26, 2019, and connected specifically to the twin flame connections. And this is what came forward. So in the beginning of a regression, I asked about how far back are we looking at, and they showed me that this was about 300 AD. All right. And when asked, you know, to show me part of the world, where we're looking at, they began to show me through my third eye. I ended up in the middle of the night, standing among trees. I couldn't really see them. There was no moon, or at least so little that I couldn't see anyway. Anyway, all I could see were stars above and really dark, you know, silhouettes of trees surrounding me. That's how it opened up. So it took me a little while to maneuver in the dark to find a campfire that had pretty much gone out. It was pretty much just coals at this point, surrounded by a pack of wolves. All of them were sleeping around. But because of the fire, I knew that there had to be a human involved here, and sure enough, he was laying around right next to the fire as well, just like all the rest were. And so it was clear that this man, who was about 22 years old, you know, I never did get a name. I guess we don't need a name. I actually kind of refer to him as Tarzan, because he definitely lived out in nature with the animals. So, yeah, let's just call him Tarzan for now. But basically, he lived with these wolves. This was his family. And the next day I could see more of the environment. We were definitely, also slip and say first person sometimes, but ultimately they lived up in the mountain. And actually I was told that this is actually, it may not be right on Mount Rainier, but it's at least near there. So in that geographical area, which is Mount Rainier is, I believe, in the Cascade Range of Washington State here in the U.S. And so that's the area that we were looking at. I could tell by, once I saw with sunlight, that there was patches of snow that hadn't melted, because whatever the elevation was, it was high enough where that wasn't fresh snow, but there was still some on the ground. And that there was definitely, you know, down below into a valley. So we're up in elevation. And apparently he lived up there with those wolves as one of them. And he had been, my understanding is kind of like, if I say adopted by them. It really had kind of a Tarzanish kind of storyline, that at a very young age he had lost his parents. And so this pack, especially the alpha female in the pack, had pretty much adopted him and raised him. So this was his family, and this is how he lived out with the wildlife. Okay. So what I'm shown, and again, this is connected to the twin flame. So I realized, okay, there's just one guy up there, you know there's going to have to be at least another person somewhere in the storyline. And surprise, surprise, not surprised. Sure enough, down in the valley below, there was a little village of, I guess if at that time probably Native Americans of some sort, that lived down there. You could see during the day at least smoke and things coming up. So there was a village down there. And he certainly didn't go in and show himself to the people, but he was curious sometimes and bored sometimes, and he would go down and at least observe them. He obviously was smart enough to know he was not full wolf anyway, that he looked more like these people. So there was some curiosity there. And he also realized that they were much more advanced, I guess, at least vocabulary-wise. He did know English to a certain degree because his parents apparently spoke English, but once they passed, he really didn't speak it much. So he was limited in his vocabulary, but he did understand to a certain degree whatever languages there were there. Okay, so yes, he did eventually see a young lady that caught his eye in one of his trips down towards the village. In fact, my understanding is he first saw her sitting by I'm going to call it a lake, but it was a really small lake. It was a little too large to be a pond, but it really wasn't a big lake either. But anyway, a body of water that he had seen her sitting there, just kind of sitting and enjoying nature and being away from the village. In fact, as he followed her and watched the things that she would do during the day, she liked to go up there quite a bit on her own. And when she wasn't there, she lived in the village or near the village, and part of her duties, I guess, during the day when she was working in some fashion was to take grain. My understanding is that she lived with her father on what would have been considered a little farm that raised raised either wheat or some sort of grain, something that looked like wheat anyway, and that they raised it, they harvested it, and she would take it in that form to wherever in the village she would take it, and then they would process it further, I guess. But that was, I think, one of their main ways of making money was farming. So he would watch her from afar. Of course, he never went into town or let anybody see him, but from afar would allow her to do, or would do that, would watch. And he was enamored, of course. And so eventually, one of the times where she's up there by that little lake, just sitting enjoying nature, he finally works up the nerve to show himself. And he starts by walking out of the woods from the other side of the small body of water and just sitting down just to kind of feel out how she's going to react to this man coming out of the woods that, he's dark from, all the sun exposure, and he's only wearing, a little bit of fur in important places. It's really clearly not from even the group that they live with in that village. And she just kind of sits there, and they look at each other and they don't really say anything. And eventually she has to leave, and then they go off and do their own things. And so this is how it starts, right? And every day that it happens where she can come, and they're curious, obviously, so they come pretty much every day if they can. Every time he sits a little closer to her until finally one day she's just like, this is ridiculous. She gets up and she walks over to where he's at and sits down near him so they can actually talk and introduce each other. And so this is how they start to get to know each other. They share about their lives and etc. Now, one thing they did show me early on in this regression was there was something different about this girl, which I'm not a history expert, but I'm pretty sure that as far as like European looking people, probably shouldn't have been in that area yet. And yet she and her father, from what I could see, they look more Caucasian, which confused me, I have to say. And I wasn't clear, like they didn't give me right away why they look different. I'm like, I'm going to assume they're like some sort of missionary, somebody that comes from somewhere else. Why else would they be there? Why else would they come all that way and live with these people and be from a totally different culture? And I still wasn't quite getting why a Caucasian looking person would be there. But anyway, I'll explain when they eventually tell me why. This is how they get to know each other. So eventually, of course, the emotions start, right? You know, this is a twin flame reading. Of course they're going to be twin flames, right? And of course, you know, one of the things that they made sure I wanted to convey to you is a lot of times twin flames come in very different packages, come from very different cultures, very different age ranges, you name it, which can definitely add to the difficulty of coming together and staying together. So it's not unusual at all for people from very different places to come together, but this is a doozy, and I'll share in a little bit how different these people really are. So anyway, so they get the feelings going, and eventually, of course, you know, they're young, they're in love, and they do more than just talk out there at the little lake. But I'm getting that it is getting to be colder. It is getting to the point where the weather could start to keep them from being able to see each other. Some flurries of snow already maybe starting to show up. So there is a concern that they're not going to be able to see each other almost every day like they are. And they're going to have to make a decision about what they're going to do to be able to keep their relationship going. And she knew her father would probably, well, not probably, she was certain, he would be extremely upset about, well, bringing anybody in from the mountainside. Anyway, maybe not if she had met somebody in town, but none of them interested her. But to bring somebody like this in to introduce to her father was not going to be received well. She knew this, and he, of course, the conditions he lived in, it wouldn't be fair to ask her to come live up there. So, you know, they had some decisions to make. So at some point, again, the weather was getting bad. There apparently was either a blizzard or some sort of snowstorm that happened shortly thereafter. And she's very upset now. It's what they told me is that she had just told her father about him, that she felt it was time, she needed to see him, she wanted to see him, hoping that maybe somehow her father would see a way of maybe having him come help on the farm, somehow helping him integrate there so that they could be together. And well, she wasn't totally surprised, but still, she was very upset that her father absolutely would not allow this. There was no way any daughter of his was going to end up with somebody like that. And she was totally forbidden to ever see him again. And if she ever tried to, he would kill him. Well, she was very upset and ran off into the storm. And ultimately was headed up the mountain. And she was yelling Tarzan's name, whatever his name was, yelling his name, trying to, you know, see if they could hear her. But she kept scrambling up the mountain trying to get there, and he did hear her. I think it was actually maybe the wolves that helped him hear her. and because there was some telepathic communication there, they were able to communicate. And so he knew that she was calling and trying to come up, so he was trying to move down the mountain. And there was a stream that needed to be crossed by a log, and she actually fell in while she was trying to do that. Now, granted, she wasn't in really a threat of drowning. It wasn't that deep, but absolutely freezing cold. So she was able to get to the other side, but absolutely it was, you know, freezing to death, and he was able to find her pretty quickly. But, you know, a choice between taking her up and taking her down, it made much more sense, because there was already a fire, to take her up the mountain and get her by the fire. So I get to meet the family up there, right? So yeah, it takes her a little while, but she thaws out by the fire, and all the wolves are there, and you know, what's wrong? Oh, this is how it went. And the problem is, now that I'm gone, you know, if I don't go back, he's probably going to send out a search party, and not only will they probably find them, but also the wolves, and it won't be good for anybody. You know, people, at least the wolves, will probably die. And possibly him, because her father is so furious. So they can't stay there. But at this point, it's pretty much dark, and they can't do anything about it. So she spends the night there. Okay. Basically, the next day, they know she has to return. And they decide, he even says basically goodbye to the mother, that he feels like he needs to go down and do what he can to integrate into that society so they can be together. And you could tell, I could actually see him interacting with the alpha female. In her brown eyes, you could kind of see this, you know, sadness, but also understanding that if he wanted to go and this was what was going to bring him happiness, then so be it. So they go down. And they go up to the door, the front door or whatever. I don't even think she has to knock. And her father comes to the door, and right outside the door, and he is furious. And this is when I saw his eyes. And this is when I went, what? You know, I get surprised sometimes by these past life regressions too. They were red. And not just because he was mad, you know, they were red. And maybe it was increased because he was mad, but that's what I was told. Yeah, he's a vampire. And then it all kind of hit me like, Mount Rainier is in Washington State. Wasn't Twilight in Washington State? Twilight, the movie series, wasn't that in Washington State? Somewhere over there, probably not too far from Mount Rainier. Forks. I don't even know if there really is a Forks, but it all kind of hit me like, okay. So any Twilight fans out there are really going to like this. Anyway, I'm not making this stuff up. This is what they showed me, and I'm just telling you, okay? So he's a vampire. And even though he's really angry, he does invite both of them in. And it's made clear that they're in love and they want to do whatever it takes to be together. And so they're all sitting at the table, and the father's calmed down some. And this is his daughter, so he really does want her to be happy, but this is not what he had in mind. Right? And they're trying to brainstorm about how this could work. So the details that I'm given, and this was after my phone and, you know, the recording ended, and I'm like, okay, well, at least let me get the rest of the story. Here's the rest of the story. The daughter is not a vampire yet. This is his biological daughter, the father, and apparently he already, you know, he and whoever he's married to, they had this daughter, and at a very young age, he was bit or turned or whatever you want to call it, and turned into a vampire. And then the wife, I think, in the same attack or whatever was happening there, I think that's when she died. So the girl was only maybe 3 years old or so when all of this happened. And now her father's a vampire. And they weren't from that area. This is why they look very different. They actually were from, I'm getting Europe somewhere. Because he's a vampire now, and he's, I think, more psychic too, but ultimately, my understanding is he now had to worry about his little girl being attacked by other vampires. And in an attempt to keep her safe, he left Europe and made his way over time to this part of the world. I guess to try to keep her safe, or maybe he found out, maybe even now I might be getting that he might have found out maybe there was a group over there, something about that area that might be a better place for them. Or at least maybe they didn't know about vampires over there. I don't know. Because I don't see them like, they live in this town for a reason. They're not off with a bunch of other vampires. So, and these people pretty much accepted him and his daughter, and he definitely brought the farming, at least of that particular grain, if it was wheat or some other grain. He brought that with him as a way to integrate into the good graces of the village, because they were different. Anyway, that's their backstory of how they got there. So she's not a vampire yet. But because she recently, turned like 18 or something, a key age, up until then, she had asked her father many times to turn her. She wanted to she apparently at some point was told about all of this and knew that he would have a long life. And she wanted that too. She didn't want her father to ever not be her father, right? So she constantly was asking him to turn her. And he kept saying, no, at least not until you're an adult where you can make an educated choice. No, not going to happen. Not going to happen. And even then, I'd really prefer you to choose a life where you can actually, be with another human, probably. So she's still human, but she is an adult now. And my understanding is that she was about to choose that option, and that they were actually waiting for, get this, a special alignment. And yes, it was an annular solar eclipse. Now let me tell you real quick about an annular solar eclipse. My understanding, I'm not an expert, but the basics that I know about it is that the position of the moon is that it's maybe the farthest away point that it can be from the Earth. So when it crosses over in front of the sun, it doesn't completely block it out like a typical solar eclipse would be. It actually creates a bit of a halo of the sun around the moon. I think this is fairly rare. I don't know how rare, but fairly rare. So we have one of those coming up in just less than 2 days, right? So this is why this particular past life is being brought up, because somehow obviously with the cycles, it is connected. So they were waiting for that. Oh, and also, not only is it a solar eclipse, it is actually a new moon as well, which my understanding, this one especially, has a multiple level increase in a power as a new moon. I don't know all the details why, it just is what I'm hearing. So you've got this powerhouse new moon and an annular solar eclipse happening at the same time right now in this lifetime, and this is basically what was happening back then. Okay. My understanding is that they were waiting however long for that particular moment to do it, because there's something extra powerful, extra magical, I would say, about that moment of the eclipse. So they were going to wait until that point to turn her by, I guess, biting her and whatever else, like you see in the movies. I'm not sure exactly how it goes, but that was the plan. So she still, even as an adult, was still demanding at this point that be what happens. Now, that was before she met Tarzan. Only by maybe 2 or 3 months earlier. She still wanted it, but at the same time, obviously she was now torn about how could that happen and still be with him. All right, so what I'm shown now, or should I say the other piece first? Yes, I'll tell you now. On the flip side, I am told that Tarzan is actually half werewolf. Okay, once again, Twilight fans, you love it, don't you? Okay, so he lives with the wolves because, or the werewolves, is what I'm being told. They are actually werewolves, but they tend to stay in wolf form. At least most of the time. I suppose they can switch up, but basically, obviously, for the most part, they stay in wolf form. He, however, because he was only half, his mother, which I do believe is actually that alpha female, had mated with a human at some point. Well, some point, about 22 years earlier, she had mated with a human. So he was only half. And when he was born, he was in human form and never really was able to, if he was able to shift, he wasn't able to keep it. So ultimately, he existed in human form at least most of the time. And all of his young life, he just wanted to be full werewolf. He wanted to look like his family. He wanted to be in wolf form. And because of the restrictions of his genetics, he wasn't able to. Okay. That gives you that idea. Well, surprise, surprise, the same annular solar eclipse that was happening back then was going to open a window for him to actually activate or do whatever needs to happen with his genetics to actually be able to be in wolf form. So what I was getting with all of this information was this annular solar eclipse new moon that we're having right now in 2019 packs the same amount of energy, maybe even more than that one. And considering that both sides are waiting for that date to transfigure their human bodies, there must be something about this eclipse that brings the opportunity of being who you truly want to be. Okay, let's just say that. If you have a choice between 1 or 2 or more options, the magic of this solar eclipse somehow gives you the opportunity to shift and to really step in powerfully into whichever one you choose. I'm really getting, this is all about transfiguration, transformation at a whole nother level in the solar eclipse right now. That's just what I'm getting. This is big, because a lot of us are going through metamorphosis right now, whether we know it or not. So it feels like a decision point, a choice point for us right now in 2019. Who are we going to be going into 2020? Big. This is no small potatoes, okay? So these two were faced with a similar choice back then. They both had plans to join their family members at a whole nother level. A whole nother level. Completely join as a vampire, be fully connected to her father in that way. And then of course he was going to be finally in wolf form and be able to run and live as one of them. And this is what they were both absolutely desiring, and then they met. And now, how can I have it all? How can I be with this person I love? And we know they're twin flames, so this is not just love. This is like that deep, yearning, have to be with each other experience and still be able to be with their families. They feel like they're having to choose. And they are. They are. Again, it's not easy being twin flames. A lot of times we have major blockages to overcome to be together. So, okay, these are the dynamics. And at the point of the solar eclipse in that life, here's what they choose to do so they can be together. They both choose to stay human. Now they get their heart's desire. They get to stay together, live together, probably in that little village, at least to begin with. And they still have access to their families, but again, the genetics is different. And over time, that will affect relatedness. And this is what they chose in the first version, which you think, yay, they get to be together, you know. But what they really wanted was all of it. So even though the solar eclipse came and went, neither one of them went through the processes to shift into something physically different than what they were already. Okay, that's how the first one ended. They did have a life, although I do understand that I think it was maybe because of his genetics, because he was half werewolf, they weren't able to get pregnant. So they didn't end up having any children in the first one, which was a disappointment, I believe. But really it was, you know, they wanted to be together, and that's exactly what they got. They actually got what they wanted in that regard. They did what they wanted. So that's the end of the original regression. That's where we got to, that's where they got to. However, when I get to the end of a past life regression, I do ask if there's a higher level outcome that could be had. Please show me where and how to intervene in that storyline. And this is now the rewrite part. And this is where I did get an inkling of how it's going to go. They might give me a few more pieces right now. But ultimately, by the time I finish this rewrite right now, there will be a higher level outcome of some sort. And it will impact the Twin Flame Collective, which is everybody. So, and I was already feeling it earlier while I was even contemplating, okay, do I need to get back on the video? What am I supposed to do here with it? I was feeling the energy already. So this is going, especially understanding this annular solar eclipse, way more than just a typical solar eclipse, okay? And it is, in my opinion, what I was being downloaded, this is all about transformation and transfiguration and choosing powerfully who you want to be and your self-expression in the world. And if you really want your twin flame, whether they're in your life or not yet, this is a very important choice. So, and in fact, okay, what they're telling me to tell you is that it's probably best not to change for somebody else. If you want to change, if you want to transfigure or transform into something else, you need to do it based on what works best for you. If you do it independently, most likely what they're telling me right now to tell you is that will line you up the best for whoever you're meant to be with. So, you know, in a way, that is what they did in the first version. They didn't change, but what did they want up until that point? They wanted to change. So they did change their mind anyway of what they were going to do based on wanting to be together. So now what I'm going to do, and this is now live, this is now going to be what I'm guided to do and say, and I'm going to share as I go along as I do the actual rewrite. And we will shift it back then and now, right now. Okay? So, I'm taken back to when the father and the daughter and Tarzan are sitting at the table trying to figure out how can they be together. They both have these things coming up where they were committed to shifting their whole lives just very shortly, probably just a day or two before, right? Just like right now. How can they be together and still, you know, if preferably have a connection with their families? She is torn. She loves her father so much. And if she chooses to stay with him, with Tarzan, eventually her father is going to outlive her. I mean, she'll grow old and he won't age. And even if he's able to stay around, she's going to eventually lose him. And just all the things that she envisioned being able to experience with her father, knowing that they would have an unlimited amount of time together. That was a very strong draw. But she didn't see that as an option. As far as having both, right? Choosing that and being with Tarzan. So that really wasn't fitting exactly what she wanted either. And of course, Tarzan still wanted to be a part of his family and get to be the wolf that he always wanted to be. It was always his dream to be a wolf, even though he was in human form his whole life. But he loved this woman. How's this going to work? They didn't really see how it was going to work for both of them to stay together and in a way that could actually, you know, be a strong bond and have both. So again, in the first version, they both gave up the dream of being with their families, at least in a genetic way. Okay? She ultimately felt like she needed to choose her father. At least, you know, going through with the... So this is the rewrite now. This is the rewrite. We know the first version, they both talked themselves into staying human. And they got to stay together that way. But apparently, there's a better outcome. So what I'm getting is, in this version, as much as it tears her apart, she wants to fully become a vampire still. And, well, him staying human or being a full-blown werewolf was not going to be a good match for that. Even if he could stay with her and grow old with her as a vampire, it's still, you know, obviously they're going to grow old and die anyway. Or at least he would. So they're not really seeing, excuse me, a way for this to work out. So they choose, or yeah, she chooses again to follow what she originally planned, which was to have him turn her on at the time of the eclipse. And then he felt, well, okay, then that means I'm going to go ahead and follow through with what I was going to do with my family, and I'm going to choose to be a werewolf. Okay? And that's what they decided. And again, this is only a day or two beforehand, so he knew that that's what she was going to go through that day. She knew that's what he was going to go through that day. So now we see him and the wolves back up by that campfire. They're all around the campfire, and it's during the day, and it is, they can actually see it where they're at. See this annular solar eclipse where they're at. It will happen over there where they're at. And so he's there, he's prepped, everybody is ready for the ceremony, whatever they're going to do with the wolves, and him finally making the choice to step into being a full-blown werewolf on the outside too. And then the girl and her father actually walk up just as this is about to happen. Now he can tell immediately she's already been turned. She's got a glow about her. She's absolutely gorgeous. But she came to support what he chose. And she is happy in her choice too. But she wants to be there to watch his full transfiguration and support it. So he's appreciative that she's there. And he's got a few minutes here to sit and think about this one last time as the moon is starting to cross, it's starting to get closer and closer, and he's sitting there and he looks at his mother. And again, they have a telepathic connection, so I think he's able to tell his mother, I love you, Mom. Basically, thank you for everything. But I can't do this. This is the woman I love. And I am willing to join her on every level. And the mom, I think if wolves can cry, there's a tear in her eye, but she understands. Again, all she wants is for him to be happy. And he gets up. And he walks over to the girl and hugs her and whispers in her ear, basically, I want to be with you. And I want to be with you forever. And there's only one way for that to happen. So she bites him. I believe on this side. And she just kind of hangs on to him as he starts to go with whatever. Yeah, there's some convulsions and things like that going on. And so what I'm getting is, yeah, that wolf pack, that werewolf pack did watch him transfigure. And we're witness to him choosing the form that best suited him in the moment. What he powerfully chose was to be a vampire. Not because it was better or worse, but that was the only way that he saw to be able to be with her forever. So I'm feeling the energy on this already, and I do believe this is actually the rewrite. So I'm just going to put this into time and space right now. These are twin flames together forever, as far as the immortality part of all of this. They chose love above all else. Not even about form, not about which group they chose to be physically, genetically a part of. It was about love. It was about following their hearts. I see them traveling the world together. The world. He has all the time now to learn anything that he might need in different cultures, etc. And just timeless. So let's see, 300 AD, that's only about 1700 years. What do you think? That just changed. That just changed back then. You think they're here? I think they're here. Somewhere. somewhere out there in the world, these two vampires are still very young, very much in love. And for today, our perfect example of twin flame love. So tomorrow, or the next day, wherever you are in the world, when this annular solar eclipse and new moon happen, it doesn't have to be overhead for you to have this experience. You get to choose. It may really be family versus twin flame. Now, I don't want to make it opposition, but you may be having to choose something like that between at least a few choices. And let's not say it's always about family, but whatever it is, a choice in who you want to be, how you want to be expressed in the world, how you want to be connected to your twin flame. Even if it's not something you're aware of. Maybe you haven't met your twin flame yet, or you do, but you're just not sure. If you follow your heart, I think that's the real message here. Follow your heart, your soul. Actually, it's more than just heart, your soul. This is twin flame energy. This isn't just love, the regular love. It's that passionate, this is your other half kind of energy. If you follow that, then that kind of love can be yours. Now, is that the only thing people live for? No. Some people don't really care about love connections or that kind of connection or whatever. So this isn't for everybody as far as what to choose tomorrow. I'd say just be who you are meant to be. And it'll all line up for your highest good. That's what I'll say right now. That's what they're saying right now. So that's it. The rewrite is done. It changed 300 AD. And they've had 1700 years of getting wedded bliss, you know? They travel all over. Maybe I'll get to meet one of them. I don't know. I'm glad somebody out there is already living this kind of connection. And so now actually this can be the template for the twin flames right now. That kind of love, that kind of passion, that kind of experiencing life together with somebody else at that level. It's accessible now. At this level, it hasn't probably been accessible at this level before. Now it is. So, wow. Who'd have thought this solar eclipse was going to be so power-packed? I didn't until today. I didn't know that either. But the message gets out when it's supposed to get out. So whoever sees this was meant to see it. So I think I said in the beginning that this is actually going to be the first of many videos probably where I'm either doing a full-on live past life regression and rewrite, or like this, so maybe there's some glitches and I can only share however I can share instead. Either way, I do believe that the twin flame journey, and in the verse, it's the Versa journey, again, just another higher level octave of that. That's available now that we're in the verse, by the way. Prior to the end of July 2019, I don't believe this was possible, but now it is. And you can go to my website at rewritingtheverse.com to find out why that's so. And also, if you're interested in any kind of individual or group past life regression and rewrite, you can look on there and see what my services are. All right. So this is amazing. I'm feeling the energy already. Another uplift, and could be even considered a portal at this point. Another portal for us to go through. And thank you again to the twin flames and the divine masculine, divine feminines that have helped contribute to this vibration and our ascension journey. So until next time, have a wonderful day. Peace and joy to all. Goodbye.